Hello, my name is Tawana Brown, and I serve as the Assistant Director in Parent and Family Programs. I want to thank you all for joining us for our UA 27 webinar. Today, we have Alicia Brown from Housing, who will share a little bit of information that your student will need moving forward for the summer. Sounds good.
Great. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I'm going to share my screen now so that I can share some relevant information with families, and we'll get started. I'm going to jump right in just a moment to talking about the application process, because that's where so many of our questions are coming from at this point. And we'll talk too about the assignment process, and we'll touch on move-in with more details to come. But I'm going to start where many of you probably are right now, which is wondering about how to apply for housing or what's going to happen if your student already has. Here at UA, we have an online housing application. You're eligible, your student is, to apply if they have been admitted to the university and have paid the freshman enrollment deposit. The application opened up at the beginning of October, and through February 1st, a couple more weeks, any student who applies is going to select their own room. That means in May, at a date and time that's assigned to them, they're going to go online. They'll see the buildings, the floors, the rooms, the bed spaces that are available that they're eligible for, and they're going to pick one. It'll be a little different for students who complete the application after February 1st, and it's fine if you do. The difference there is that you are assigned by HRC staff. There's not a published housing deadline. I certainly encourage folks to go ahead and submit your application once you've made a decision and are comfortable putting in your freshman enrollment deposit. Along with the freshman enrollment deposit, which you will pay separately, you will pay $175 housing deposit. That will be due specifically as part of your housing application process. That's a $35 housing fee, and then a specific prepayment, which is $140. And as a prepayment, that means as long as you do attend UA, that's $140 credit, which is on your account. Watch for an email confirmation when you submit it, or if you think you already have, I would go back and make sure you see that. That confirms that your application was submitted completely, it is fully done, and that date that it was submitted has been recorded. So what happens if you do this and your plans change? We try to make it as comfortable as possible for you to go ahead and submit this application by making the prepayment refundable up through a few different dates. So you apply for housing and your plans change, you'll need to submit a cancellation request online. That's in a student's My Housing portal. And if they do it up through the end of the day on May 1st, they will get a full prepayment refund, all of that $140 back. Then we have a couple other cancellation deadlines, June 1st and June 15th, both of which would allow you to receive at least a partial refund. If you applied by February 1st, you're taking part in room selection. And as I mentioned, that will happen in May. We're not publicizing those dates yet. Those are still being worked on. So once we have gotten those determined and then we figure out students' login times, you'll be notified of that information by email. But we're a little ways off from that. I would say late March or early April, students will be told their specific dates and times to log in. Those hours do take place in the evening, so we hope to make it as convenient as possible, and they will be taking place in May. Login times are staggered, so obviously not everybody is logging in trying to find a space at the same time, and it's determined by your housing application date and time. So that means, of course, the earlier in the process that a student applies, the earlier they're going to be taking part in room selection, and by definition, there will be more options open. A student who applied for housing, say on October 15th, will do room selection earlier than a student who applies for housing on January 31st or somewhere in between. So when your student gets that time and you're wondering where it came from, it's directly tied to when the student submitted their housing application. Your login time is the first time you can log in, but then once the system is open afterwards, a student could log in later if they're not available. You can't continue to log in multiple times though. You go in, you find your space, make your choice, and then that's your housing assignment. And just for people to be aware, this is probably intuitive, but choices do decrease over time. So I certainly encourage students go in as quickly as possible at your assigned time or as soon after as you can. We're going to put a housing selection guide out there on the housing website. It's not there yet, but should be by March, and it will be on the housing website under resources. We also offer a practice room selection, and that will happen in April. Students will get a lot more information, including specific login information, but I really encourage students to take advantage of this practice room selection. I think it helps students to feel a lot more comfortable. You go in and see essentially what the system is going to look like. You won't see all of the choices, that's the main difference, but you'll see what it looks like to navigate through, to look at buildings, to click on spaces, to confirm that your roommates are available. So my experience is students who've done the practice feel a lot more at ease when it comes to the real thing and maneuver through the process more quickly. I do want to say right now, just to help keep people's expectations realistic, the fact that you or your student participates in online room selection in May does not specifically guarantee a building or a type of building. And when I'm asked each year to predict what will be available when, it's just an impossible question, other than to say there are more options open early on and fewer toward the end, but students differ every year in what's most popular. So just because you go in at a certain time, it would not be fair to assume something will be available. I tell students to have their plan A. I think that's great, but have in mind plan B, plan C, have some backup options. And then once you've picked and you click finish, finish is exactly what it sounds like. You have finished the process. You've picked a space. That's the one you should anticipate being in. You can't keep going in and looking around, and it wouldn't serve any purpose because there are fewer and fewer options, and our staff can't reassign students. So just to emphasize that it's important to be careful and not to rush. Everybody wants to be as efficient as possible, but sometimes you rush through the process, pick something, click finish, and have immediate regrets. And at that point, we're unfortunately not able to help students. So that was a quick discussion of what it means to do online room selection for students who are selecting for themselves. Now, we know that plenty of students are still thinking about UA, learning about UA, getting admitted, making up their mind. So there will be plenty of students who apply for housing after February 1st. The difference here is on the application, it will ask you for your top 10 residence hall choices. It is not asking that up through February 1st for students who we anticipate selecting for themselves. So that's not a part of the application until beginning February 2nd. That list is editable. So if a student perhaps gets admitted to the Honors College after they have submitted their housing application, realize they're eligible for honors housing and want to make that choice, then they could go back in and edit their list of building choices. Seeing something specific like that, part of honors housing, you have to be in the Honors College to be able to view it. But change your mind, look at cost, make some different choices, and you can go back and edit your potential list of top residence hall choices. Our staff begin making housing assignments in late May, and that's after room selection has taken place. And honestly, that tends to go through late July, even beginning of August, depending when students submit their application. There are a number of factors that are going to affect when a student is assigned. And this is a question that we get a lot. Everybody's impatient, which I understand, or maybe they're excited is a better term than impatient. But a number of things are going to impact when a student gets an assignment. So of course, those who apply up through February 1 know that room selection will happen in May. That's a pretty concrete idea. And then we begin, but cover several months of assignments by our staff. So things that are affecting what we do are most importantly application date. Again, the later you apply as part of the process, most likely the later that you'll get an assignment, but gender makes a big difference. Sometimes there's a little bit more space available for males or females. Not all buildings or spaces are available to both males and females. Participation in a living learning community certainly affects when and where you get assigned, and then roommates. And I'll talk a little bit more about the effect of roommates in just a few moments. Again, we are absolutely taking into account students' preferences, but are not able to guarantee any specific building. So take your list of preferences seriously as you put it on your application, but do know, again, the later in the process you are, then it's going to be a later assignment and it may impact the choices available for assignment. There's a lot of great information on the housing website about different buildings and communities and housing options. So I'm going to cover just a very brief, quick look at the general types of housing choices you will have. But as you want to dig in deeper and learn more and really explore different choices, please go to the housing website. You'll find everything from the closest Crimson Ride bus stop to the furniture in a room to closest dining options. You'll find rates, all of the things that are important to know about. Here at UA, we do have a whole spectrum of housing options. Our least expensive choices are going to be traditional halls, which typically mean students share a room, 2 students in a room, and there'll be a community bathroom on the hall. Students tell me consistently that this is the type of location where they meet the most people. We do find it's easier to get students out of their rooms, taking part in programming and other building activities when they're in a traditional hall. And again, it's going to be your most cost-effective option. So depending on personality, that is a great fit for many students. We also have a number of buildings which have suites. Our most common type of suite is a 4-bedroom with a much smaller number of 2-bedroom and a very small number of 1-bedroom suites. For the most part, within our suites, they are single occupancy bedrooms. 2 people share a bathroom. The suite shares its living room and kitchenette. That's going to be a more expensive option. It offers more space and privacy. I am also told by residents and by our RAs that it is sometimes harder to get students in suites to take part in building programs and activities. So a little bit more challenging to meet fellow students in the building. So that's certainly something to think about. Our 2 most recently constructed buildings are double occupancy with a private bathroom, and that's John England Hall and Julia Tutwiler Hall. So you have a double room as you see these 2 students, and they have their own attached bathroom. So it's a bit of a hybrid in terms of space and privacy. And in terms of cost, it's between a traditional and a suite style option. Right now, you can find current rates on the HRC website, and then proposed rates are made available in the spring. That's certainly something to look at and think about as you are thinking about best options. And again, I strongly recommend at all times that students think about more than just one option and one building, since we're never sure what'll be available either at the point they get into room selection or assignments are made. So it's good to be flexible and to be open and knowledgeable about different types of housing options that a student might receive. I mentioned LLCs briefly a moment ago, and so I'll talk just a little bit more about that. Living learning communities, very briefly, are living spaces that are connected to a particular college or academic program. So it means that a student is living somewhere where the other students around them are going to be part of that particular program. We have probably 10 or 12 of those at this point, ranging from quite small to very large and everything in between. There are LLCs associated with the Honors College, with the College of Communication. We have 2 for students of color, arts and sciences, engineering and honors together, probably a few others that I'm not remembering right now, but these are all described on the housing website. And from there, you can find an academic contact if you have more questions and a link to the application. It's important to remember that if you are applying to a living learning community, you must meet their deadlines, which are going to be separate from any type of housing deadlines. And you're also going to have to submit a housing application. So there would be 2 applications involved, and you would have to be aware of and adhere to any program deadlines. And in that case, HRC staff will make your assignment. So students in an LLC do not have to do room selection. Themed housing is a little bit different, but it includes our largest community on campus, which is honors housing. In themed housing, students are living together because they're in the same college. It's an option for them, not a requirement. It includes honors housing, also the engineering community for male students in Bryant Hall. That's quite a small themed housing option. And then business students have an option in Patey Hall. So in those cases, there's no separate application, no deadlines, no common class or academic component. It really is a matter of being able to live among students who have that one thing in common with you. And if you're eligible and you're in room selection, you'll see the spaces if they're available. So it's a simpler process than becoming part of a living learning community. The roommate search becomes available this year in February, in early February. Freshman students are able to, if they wish, search for and form a roommate pair with one other person. So 2 freshmen can pair up. They cannot form a larger group. That's something that upperclassmen can do. You're absolutely not required to search for a roommate. And I know a lot of students who had great roommate relationships with someone they didn't search for, they didn't know ahead of time, they perhaps met for the first time at move-in. So there are great ways to have successful roommate relationships, whether you choose to search for the perfect person or not. I think honestly, much about a successful roommate relationship has to do with how you behave once you've moved in. Communication, common courtesy, understanding, patience, those are probably as important or more than putting in the effort to search for somebody. But you have a tool available to you beginning February 1st and all the way up through May 8th. A freshman can search for a roommate using a program called My College Roomie, sort of Match.com approach. You get to share lots of things about yourself and say what's important in a roommate, and then see whom you match up well with and reach out to them and see if it might be a good match. So there will be a deadline prior to the start of room selection. It is anticipated to be May 8th. And students eligible for My College Roomie will get a welcome email so they'll know when they can begin looking. That's where you search. And then once you found someone, regardless of how you find them, roommate pairs are created in a student's My Housing portal. So that's going back to the same place that you did the application in your housing portal. We get lots of questions about 4 students living together, since we certainly do have 4-person suites. There's no official way to form a group of 4 as freshmen. So it's possible for 2 pairs to try to get together. It takes a few things falling into place nicely, but we do lay out how someone might approach that on the housing website. So if that's something 4 students want to try to do, I encourage them to go read this section on our website and see what might need to happen to make it perhaps fall into place. So move-in will be coming up before we know it, and we always get lots of questions about the move-in process. Beginning in June, students have the ability to pick a move-in day and time through their housing portal, and that will be eligible and available to students who have a housing assignment. If somebody hasn't been assigned to housing yet, they are not able to select a move-in time because it's tied to a particular building. So what will happen is you will see the types of times and days that you're eligible for, meaning if you are taking part and have registered for an early activity, and there are a number of those, several are on this slide, from sorority recruitment to $1 Million Band to Camp 1831 and others. If you're signed up for one of those programs, you will see the date that you need to move in, and we'll be able to pick that early move-in time. So we will know, as long as you've signed up and the program, that particular program has let us know, we'll know that you need to be here early, and you'll be able to, so that you are settled in and ready for your activity to start. Otherwise, our tentative move-in dates will be August 19th through 21st. And that's with classes beginning on the 23rd, I believe, on Wednesday. So it'll be the weekend before. That will involve assistance on most days to help you get unloaded and into your building. And again, you'll have the option over 3 days of picking, hopefully, a time that works out well for you. This information is generally put on the housing website right about in March. There's so many logistical challenges that go into getting all of this straight. So it's usually March when the dates are publicized. And then again, it's not until early June when you will actually be picking your date and time. We encourage people strongly not to make their travel plans until after they know their move-in times, if at all possible, especially because at this point, you may not know any type of early activity a student is taking part in. So even if you're aware of general freshman move-in times, there are a number of activities that a student may sign up for a little bit later in the semester, and that would definitely affect their move-in time. So we would strongly encourage you, as you're beginning to think about plane tickets or hotel reservations or things, you may want to make some plans if they can be canceled with no penalty, but otherwise, if at all possible, know specifically when your move-in date and time will be. We have lots of great information on the website suggesting items you need to bring, are helpful to have. There's a fairly small list of things which are not allowed in a residence hall, and those are almost always things that are a fire hazard. Things like candles and incense and toasters, anything with an open heating element. But that's all on our website. So as you're beginning to buy things or plan for what to bring, you can find both helpful suggestions and a small number of prohibited items. It's really important to talk to your roommate. You may be able to share a Keurig, and so not everybody has to bring one. Maybe you're going to share a TV. There are other things that you may be willing to buy together or to share. And certainly think about purchasing items once you've moved in. I understand the excitement of wanting to get everything set. And if you're a planner like I am, I know the desire to check everything off the list, but I see families every year who move in with things that it turns out there's either not room for, or their roommate has, or they just realize they're not going to need. And I see parents putting things right back into their car to take home again. So sometimes it's a great idea to get here, look at the space with a roommate or suite mates, and decide if you really want and need some things that you may have been anticipating having. Here is all of our departmental contact information. I can't emphasize enough how useful the housing website is. Right now, it's got an application guide and a guide to the roommate search process. It's got our rates, detailed descriptions of all our buildings, and descriptions of all our living learning communities. So this is a great way to get started and really do a deep dive into information about living on campus. And we'll continue to add additional resources, particularly information about move-in later in the semester. So please keep checking back. If you don't find the information you want, call us or email us. We share a lot on social media too, and we'll do lots of reminders about deadlines and lots of information about move-in as we get into the summer. So if you're on social media, I encourage you to follow us there as well. Hope this is a good introduction to what's happening this time of year in terms of housing, and certainly hope that folks will reach out to us if there are questions that I haven't answered today.
Thank you so much, Alicia. This information was great. Everyone, thank you for joining us for this presentation. Please continue to stay tuned. We'll have more UA 27 webinars to come. And as Alicia said, this information is vital to your student starting today. And so make sure that you're talking with your student and having these discussions up front. And we look forward to seeing you soon, and roll tide. Thank you.
Thanks.